Friday afternoon edition of the Call Up, and we want to kind of catch you up on everybody who's off to a hot start in minor league baseball. Now that we're cooking at every full season level, I'm Aram White and he's Jack McMullen. We're going to try to be as efficient as possible. We got a lot of names to go through, both on the offense and pitching side. Of course, small samples, no reason to get too crazy, change your evaluations, validate yourself too much on opinions you maybe had in the beginning of the year. But we finally have enough to check in and talk about the strong performers out of the gate. So that's exactly what we're going to do.
Real quick, you want to talk about validation? I'm validated. Nugget Chef at J Hey Kid, who is one of the hosts of the Baseball is Dead podcast that just moved to Underdog. He tweeted out a note that I thought was very important for the start of this show. Jared Jones has 25 punch-outs and 2 walks. The only other pitcher in Major League history with 25 or more Ks and 2 or fewer walks through their first 3 starts was Masahiro Tanaka in 2014. So you want to talk validation. He's the second guy in big league history to do that. And the other one is the most decorated pitcher to ever come over from Japan before Yoshinobu Yamamoto. So big win on the Jared Jones front.
Yeah, I mean, and it's got to be so exciting for Pirates fans. Like to have a pitcher coming up and making waves before Paul Skeens does is like it's a dream scenario, right? You have, imagine I tell you, a few months ago, in early April, there's going to be a flame-throwing right-hander who can run it up to triple digits, overpowering the competition, also mixing in a disgusting slider and putting up some of the best rookie numbers we've seen out of the gate in a while. And it's not Paul Skeens. Like that's like a dream scenario for Pirates fans. And we talk all the time about the other arms on the way, and there's so many fun arms. But I felt like seeing it at the big league level with somebody not named Paul Skeens has to just have Pirates fans feeling a little bit more hopeful. Aside from the great start that the team has at the big league level, we see all these kind of hot starts all the time from teams that are, in the middle. I think the Pirates are heading in the right direction. Don't get me wrong. But I feel like if you're looking at the grand scheme, you got to feel really good about what the future entails.
You have to feel absolutely phenomenal. And the fact that he made Bryce Harper look very stupid on Thursday night. I know the long ball kind of bit him at the tail end, but,
that's gonna
whatever.
Happen.
It's going to happen. Alec Bohm with a solo shot, and then I think Stott had a 2-run homer, or that might have been against the first guy to the pen. But, at the end of the day, dude, this guy looks phenomenal. So that is the validation that we needed from the early start. Now we can get into all the minor league guys. But we do have a big league guy making his major league debut in a matter of days.
Who?
Yariel Rodriguez.
Oh, true. I thought we were going to get into Ivan Herrera as well. Real quick, because Herrera with the Cardinals, another one of those, like maybe a little early, like let's just check in on what he's doing. The one thing I want to just monitor with Ivan Herrera and the Cardinals is playing time. Can we start to get this guy more and more run? We talked about that when we had him on the top 100 list. And by the way, so cool that Cespedes Barbecue shouting us out for the Ivan Herrera top 100 love going into the season. They do an awesome job over there. And just to take the time to highlight, us was really awesome. I really appreciate that from someone of their platform. I mean, they do some of the best stuff. I mean, that's got to be one of the first baseball podcasts I even stumbled across. I mean, they've been doing it for a while, but Jake is one of the guys that I've kind of followed along, and Jordan has done a really good job there. So really appreciate the shout out for them on Ivan Herrera and just kind of being open to reading all different kinds of prospect outlets. Because if I ran a show that's all the time and I'm just trying to ingest as much information as possible, I could easily settle in on just the MLB pipelines and the Baseball Americas. But I really appreciate them, trying to read as many perspectives as possible and then remembering where the Ivan Herrera write-up came from and all that good stuff. But they were saying also it's early, but we want to give a shout out to Just Baseball for, kind of cluing us into what Ivan Herrera could do this year. And again, emphasizing that it is early. It just is. You start to put together the small samples. We talk about that all the time, right? Where you have a small sample of last year where he succeeded at the big league level. You now have spring training where he succeeded. You have a small sample of this year where he succeeded. You have AAA success. And I feel like you can start to put all that together and say, okay, I feel a little bit more confident now because we have 2 small big league samples where Herrera's had success, tangible changes, and now it just seems like the Cardinals are seeing it too because he's not only getting more run at catcher and starting to play there pretty much primarily for them, he's hitting in the heart of their order. He's hit cleanup, he's hit 5th, he's hit there more than 6th. We really haven't seen him lower than 6th in the lineup, but they've got him right in the heart of the order, and he's been one of the few bright spots offensively for them, I think, consistently.
Yeah, so through the first 9 games, Herrera is slashing 290. He's walked once, so it's 290, 294, but a 581 slug. So that's an 875 OPS. He's got 3 homers in his first 9 games this year when he had no homers in his first, 24 games at the major league level between 2022 and 2023. He was playing sparingly, but you're seeing the power and the lift come into play early. It looks weird. The setup looks very weird. The batting stance is one that a lot of people are going to do in wiffle ball if this guy gets really notable, because it's like, hey, it's funky, try doing it and it'll look unorthodox. But what are you seeing in that unorthodox setup that is like keying him in on something mentally? Because you're obviously obsessed with hitter cues.
Yeah, so that was the thing. I think we've plugged it a couple of times on here about the thread on I think I did back in July of last season, where he was just really struggling to keep his weight back and and we're going to talk about something similar with James Wood, really struggling to get his weight back and stay there and really have any counter to the natural forward move and stay hinged on his backside. So this became kind of a cue for him where he used to have his hands pretty much in a relaxed setup, sink into the backside, and just couldn't stay there. So now you see this really exaggerated hands in front of him. He pulls it back, and it gives him this counter move that I think allows him to just focus on that and not worry as much about the lower half. I felt like he was kind of getting mechanical, just trying so hard to stay in his base. Whereas now he has this cue, pulls his hands back, it gets him into a slot. The bat path, I think it's easier for him to kind of enter the zone early and stay there. Whereas before the bat was flatter and just was kind of steep to the zone. So I think all of those things have just helped him, but then you can't deny the batted ball data where he's hitting the ball harder, he's elevating more, and he's using the whole field. That home run he hit the other day was 112 miles an hour. And I think when you look at the batted ball data, we talked about it last year, like he was hitting more balls 105 in the span of a few months than he had hit, in the entire season prior. So you have tangible adjustments there. And I'm not worried at all about the lack of walks. He's been a low chase guy for a while now, has continued to cut that down. And I know just right now he's hitting everything. So it makes sense. But there was a freeze frame I took where you can see him right at the point of kind of bringing his hands forward and starting that turn. Before, his hands were pretty crowded close to his ear. And now when you see him making that turn and starting to, bring the barrel into the zone, his hands are deeper, kind of over his back leg. And that gives you just so much more strength, but also a much easier way to get slotted and have that barrel enter the zone early. So I think you can really buy into the changes with Ivan. And it's cool to see finally the Cardinals give him more run, that was the big question. It's like, is he going to get more run? Are they going to finally kind of move Contreras into this catch or, this DH and secondary catcher role and focus on the future? And it seems like that's what they're doing. But I think Ivan Herrera even helps them more for the present.
Yeah, I think so too. Only other guy that we're going to talk about through a big league lens on this show is Yariel Rodriguez, who I just mentioned, and then we went with the Herrera one. But Rodriguez in 2 starts with Buffalo, 6 1/3, 1 hit, no runs, 10 Ks, and 3 walks. He was too good for AAA ball. Now, it was part of the build-up process. I know he was having visa issues at the beginning of the year, so they deem him ready. The Jays are 6-7 right now. They need an infusion, and this guy can clearly slice and dice through the second best level of baseball that we've got. I'm very excited to see how they use Yariel Rodriguez.
Yeah, I think listeners might remember that exchange with like Eno Saris that we called back to a little bit, probably the last time we talked to Yariel, because Eno, by the way, I had him on the Just Baseball show. He explained Stuff Plus and really all of the thought that goes into that. And it was really fascinating because somebody like him who's created it and talks about why it's such a great tool, but also, citing where it can have some gaps or, some things that they're still looking to tighten up because there's nothing that's perfect. But I mean, Eno is one of the most brilliant minds in baseball. And one of the most fascinating aspects of the Stuff Plus conversation is how it considers cut ride fastballs and fastballs that may not be as far from the norm that we see maybe if you look at a TrackMan perspective. But then you also think about it and you say, at the same time, we don't see a ton of fastballs with this shape from this angle. So there's some uniqueness, I think, to Yariel's fastball that hasn't gotten totally calculated in Stuff Plus. But he had mentioned that, in their model, based on the data that they had from prior, and I think from spring training, maybe even, it spit out a pretty bad Stuff Plus score, like even below Justin Steele, who's always overperformed that. It was significantly lower than that. And I found that kind of surprising. The one thing that Eno said, though, is like, who knows, it might still just be weird enough. And I think there's just always going to be those exceptions to the rule. But it did clue me into a little bit of, what could get caught up or like what could catch up to Yariel at the big league level. And it's, I think that this fastball is, because it is that cut ride, it's about like 12 inches of vert, no inches of horizontal. So it really has this, kind of, it's not quite like steel, but there's some similarities to it. I think there's a bit more of it in the big leagues than there is in the minors, because those guys they're rare in the minors. They fly through, they have success. It doesn't maybe play quite as well at the big league level. So I'm interested to see that from the Stuff Plus perspective. But that said, I've watched all of his video from international now to, even the WBC, and then now like the early parts of this season in AAA. And it just looks like a fastball that has enough variance to it too, where sometimes it's cutting a little to the left, sometimes it's staying true and riding, sometimes it backs up a little bit. And I think the unpredictability of it is kind of hard to quantify. And I just think it's a damn good pitch that just is going to be underrated by most models, even the best models. I just think he's going to be one of those guys that is too unique.
Now, could he run into roadblocks because of the unpredictability? Because I feel like sometimes it's unpredictable to even himself. Mm-hmm. And we've seen the command go at certain points. If you just look at like the standard numbers across his seasons in Japan, like there were some years where the command left. And, this year, like more walks than base hits allowed through 6 1/3. He walked 3 in 6 1/3. Do you think he may fight himself? Is that what the struggles are going to look like?
It might. And that's why I think we're going to probably see him in these like shorter spurt, like opener or, long relief role, swingman type role. Well, it depends how badly they need a starter and things like that. And he only stretched out to 55 and then actually 47 pitches a second time out. But you saw a lot of really uncomfortable swings, but I do see that effectively wild aspect to his fastball. And when you have that cutterish fastball and hitters don't know if it's going to cut, if you're a lefty, cut towards you, stay true and kind of ride up or back up, or, same story if you're a righty, it makes it really tough. But to your point, if you're a pitcher and you're trying to do something and it's not always doing what you want it to do, that can be a problem too. So I'm fascinated. It's kind of a wait and see thing, but it's hard to deny that, that fastball was performing in a small sample at the AAA level. He threw 53 of them and, only allowed 1 hit. And you looked at the strike rate was actually great at 70%. It's a spray if you look at the chart, but in zone whiff at 30%, swinging strike rate of 15%. Again, it's kind of hard to argue against that pitch. And I think there's even more velo in the tank. He was really averaging 93 through that spurt. So I think it's a pitch that's going to perform a lot better at 95, 96. And I think that's where we'll see, maybe the Stuff Plus models like a little bit more. And I think that's another aspect of it too, is when he was throwing in spring training in that second outing, he was averaging about 92, 93. And that may have kind of docked it from a Stuff Plus perspective as well. Cause that, obviously you want to have a little bit more velocity. You want to have anything that kind of strays from the norm. But so far his velo's been a little bit down as he's built up. So it'll be interesting to kind of monitor that because, in the NPB, he was, I know it was 1 inning spurts, but he was more 96, 97. In 4 inning spurts, can he be more 94 or 95 instead of 92, 93?
Now, do you know what he was in 2021? Because that was really his last year as a starter. In 19 appearances, he threw 94 and 2/3 innings. So, I'd be curious to know what his fastball was at that point. Build up is certainly a thing. And he'll probably jump from 92, 93 to 94, 95. But the real last sample we've got is from short spurts and spring training short spurts. And I mean, you mentioned the depleted velocity in 4 innings of work pretty much for Buffalo. So I'm curious if you have any 2021 numbers.
Yeah. So in 21, it's a great point. Came out of the gate hot. 94, 95, average 96 in an international matchup against Canada, where he threw 104 pitches, and then kind of just tapered off as the season progressed. And I know I think he dealt with some minor ailments over the last couple of years, but also, I mean, some of those outings, he threw 125 pitches in one of those outings. So you started to see that taper off as the year progressed. And then by the end of the season, he was averaging about 92 on the fastball. So that is something to monitor. But also at the same time, through that stretch of averaging 92, 93, the pitch count was, and this is game by game, 108, 98, 125, 100, 105, 92. You don't have to worry about that. I think he's mostly going to be throwing 60, 70 pitches at most. If they need him to, start to stretch out as a starter, that they might do that. And then we'll see him more in the 70 to 80 range. But I think he's best served as a multi-inning relief guy at this point, or an opener where he can keep that velo up a little bit. Because again, to Eno Sarris's point, like, I do think hitters will start to adjust to that if it's 92, 93, but that cut ride and that variance, I think, will play up a lot more when it's 95 to 96. But either way, I still think that he outperforms a lot of those stuff plus models and things like that.
Gotcha. Last guy that we're going to talk about with big league service is Heston Kjerstad, and he kind of kicks off our start to the hot minor league season. He is too good to ignore. And I know that we wanted to stay away from guys with some big league service like Nick Gonzalez, who's gotten off to a nice start, and Spencer Horwitz, who's walked 13 times in 10 games, I think. By the way, Justin Henry Malloy has walked like 10 times in 10 games. Like, these guys, like, they're always just going to walk. But Kjerstad, again, too good to brush over. Heston Kjerstad in 12 games and 60 plate appearances has 10 extra base hits, 6 homers, 25 driven in, highlighted by that 10 RBI day against Charlotte. He's slashing 388, 483, 837 for a 1320 OPS. He's way too good to be in the minor league. So I'm curious where the spot is. Like, they're not going to trade him, obviously, but O'Hearn is playing too well to supplant him. They're in a weird spot. But this is road to the show on rookie mode type stuff that Kjerstad is doing.
Actually, I disagree. If you look at the last 5 games, he only has 2 hits. So I think it's over.
Damn. All right.
No, 7 walks though. 7 walks.
He's
He's getting the Barry Bonds treatment. That's why I wanted to bring that up. I'm with you. This level is too easy for him at this point. And so I'm actually happy that he's going through this over the last 5 games of like, oh, they're not pitching to me. Because if there's one thing that we were looking for with Kjerstad, it's be more selective, draw some more walks, don't be so aggressive because it puts more pressure on the hit tool. And, that was his challenge last year. Just he was chasing a fair amount. And in the early parts of this year, he was aggressive, but like, can you blame him? He was hitting everything. And then now the last 5 games, he hasn't been seeing nearly as much to hit, understandably so, but he's been patient. So he's walked 7 times in 5 games. We haven't really seen him do that much at all through any stretch of his minor league season or any stretch of his minor league career. So that I think is a good thing, because he's not going to get pitched to like that at the big league level, but it's good to just kind of get him used to being a bit more selective and understanding that it's going to be more important to draw walks to survive at the big league level. But to answer your question as to how he fits in at the big league level, I don't know, man, because Colton Cowser just had a historic series, drove in 10 runs, hit a mega nuke. What was it, like 113 miles an hour to, just kind of put the game out of reach the other night in Boston. I don't really know where you find a spot for him, because O'Hearn, like, he's been raking for a while now. It's not just, how he started this year. He swung it last year. I think that the 2 spots that you look at are the 2 guys that I would bank on the most bouncing back, which is Cedric Mullins and Santander, more on the latter bouncing back offensively. But if there's some sort of struggle with one of those 2, you could always slide Cowser to center. You're going to lose some, defensive value there, but then you add some of these sluggers in Norfolk that could help a ton. I'm just struggling to find the spot, to be honest, Jack, because I don't know who you're going to supplant to get him these ABs.
No, man. And I mean, like, Austin Hayes, I know, hasn't gotten off to a rip-roaring start, but that's a righty bat, and you'd be replacing him with a lefty, and it just doesn't make much sense. It's hard, and I don't want him to be stuck because he's too good to be stuck. And I think if he spent an entire 150 game season with Norfolk, he'd be winning the AAA MVP and he'd be putting up one of the better AAA seasons that we've seen in quite some time. Another guy that I think could contend for that AAA MVP crown is his teammate, and that's Coby Mayo. And he's got the same number of extra base hits. So 10 extra base hits in 12 games, 59 plate appearances. He's slashing 377, 441, 660, and 1101 OPS. Now, he's striking out a lot, like over a 30% clip, 21 punch outs and 59 plate appearances. But when he's running into these balls, he's killing them. He's had a couple of tape measure shots that I'm sure have been like 112, 113. Doesn't he have a 114 home run at this point?
115.
115.
Or so 115 mile an hour double. Home run, I think he had a 111.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, like these two together is a cheat code. And at some point, I think Mayo's going to get up and he's going to take over third base entirely. And he's going to take it over from Arias and Jordan Westberg. And, you know, we'll see an infield of Mayo at third, Gunnar at short, Holiday at second, and the platoon of O'Hearn and Mountcastle at first. And that'll be the best infield in baseball, I think.
Yeah, you know, and I think you bring up the important point of like they're going to wait for Mayo's, you know, K rate to drop down a bit. I'm not seeing anything egregious from like a whiff perspective, aside from sliders are giving him some fits right now, and you know he's getting spun pretty good. But I honestly think it's a little bit of passiveness. He's swinging as little as ever, and I think there's been a lot of situations where he's taken some pitches that he could probably hit, especially like sometimes taking some fastballs. I think he's kind of getting used to getting spun so much and trying to adjust to that, which is good because you're going to get spun all the time in the big leagues, whether you're hitting in the middle of the order or later. So, you know, the fact that he's remaining productive through it, though, I think is really encouraging. And I expect, you know, that the K rate to normalize a little bit. It's pretty early. They've seen some pretty darn good arms at some points already. But yeah, that is the one thing, I guess, to monitor. And he's also the one guy, though, that has a little bit more of a direct path up. Jordan Westberg's not performing that well. Okay, at a certain point, we say, hey, let's give Mayo a shot. We're far from that, I think, because Westberg's earned a lot more of a look than that and has already showed some good flashes this year. But that is, I guess, the easy plug and play compared to the Kjerstad situation, which is a little bit more complicated.
For sure. A guy that is not blocked whatsoever is James Wood with the Washington Nationals. And he is off to a rip-roaring start to open the year. 9 games in, 43 plate appearances in. James Wood has 8 extra base hits, 6 doubles, 2 homers, driven in 4. He's got 2 bags already. He's slashing 441, 558, 794, which is a 1352 OPS. Most impressive thing to me, in 43 plate appearances, he's walked 9 times and punched out 7 times. And we talked about it on the Just Baseball show, I want to say. This is a guy that is not pressing when the situation would dictate pressing. And like, it would be totally understandable if he was like, man, I had such a good big league spring training. You know, I'm going to hit my way up to the big leagues in the next month. He's taking his way to the big leagues in the next month. And when he puts a swing on the ball, it like goes viral. The lefty on lefty sweeper from Ricky Tiedemann that he hit out. Give me the data points on that and then contextualize how freaking hard that is to do.
Yeah. So, and I saw from him afterwards, it was like, yeah, I was just kind of like seeing it well out of the hand. I'm like,
how do you see that?
A lot of people do that.
He's the first guy ever
not a lot of
see
people
the ball well out of Ricky Tiedemann's hand.
Yeah, that's not really a thing. But again, I think that kind of shows you to the mental side. Like he is really good at picking up cues, and I do think has like some more baseball IQ than you may expect from the prep 6'7" 2-sport athlete in high school that didn't really focus solely on baseball until later in his high school career. If you look at his swing at the end of high school, it was rough. He was fully a project, but I think the reason why the Padres were so excited and now the Nationals to embark on this project is you have this incredible prototype, and then you have such a smart player and such an athletic player that you're like, oh, we can really mold this into a superstar. But the data points on that slider, so it was a 0-1 pitch, and honestly, like in a pretty decent location, 82 mile an hour, starts off the plate inside, and Wood ends up crushing it 107 miles an hour, over 400 feet. You just don't see that a lot. And he looks like a different hitter, which is crazy because there's not some crazy major adjustment, but there's some subtle adjustments that have him exactly where he wants to be and now are allowing his athleticism to go and just his natural ability to hit to really shine through. And I think this guy's big league ready. And I think he's going to get up there and make some noise like right away. I think he's kind of figured it out. And that's one of my favorite swings I've seen so far this minor league season, that left on left slider, just staying through that and keeping that fair is really hard to do when it's kind of breaking, from inside of you, like to kind of back over the plate. Really hard to keep that fair the way that he did.
Yeah. So there should be nothing stopping the Nats from getting him up now. And the deadline to accrue a full year of major league service was on Thursday. At this point now, any prospect can go up and they will not reach the full year of service. So they will get pretty much 7 years from James Wood. I wonder if they wait until the end of the Super 2 deadline, which is mid to late June. And, they want to see Wood perform consistently over the course of 2 months, 3 months in AAA. And I guess I could convince myself into understanding that, but also like the Nats are not competing for anything right now. They're putting Joey Gallo in the lineup every day. Like, you've got a spot for him if you want it. And I think at this point, Nats fans should want it. And I think the Nats should want it very soon.
Yeah, I think they will. I think we get into this weird zone where the PPI is super helpful. And then it can also delay a little bit after this deadline because for a player, James Wood could come up next week. The Nationals keep that extra year of control now, and Wood could go nuclear and theoretically finish in first or second for Rookie of the Year and then gets that year of service time. So now the Nationals probably, and again, I'm just speculating, maybe they don't care. I'd imagine they do. They probably don't want to give him a chance to do that. So now I think where it's going to be a bit of a waiting game where we might not see him for another month because they don't want to give him enough time to be able to pull that runner-up or first place spot in Rookie of the Year voting to be able to get that year of service time back for himself. Because then they wouldn't get a PPI and they'd lose a year of service time. They get burned.
So can I share with you my theory on how this is going to work moving forward? Good teams are going to get the PPI picks. Like, teams that are going to be competitive because they care about the on-field product that year. The Nats, you're telling me, and like, it's totally understandable that they may prefer to blackball their top prospect out of a top 2 position in Rookie of the Year voting. And it's not like, it's not illegal what they're doing and there's justification. It's not a Scott Boras, Chris Bryant thing. But
no.
At this point, you're saying they are incentivized to not have their top prospect finish top 2 in Rookie of the Year voting. And that is not a fun thing to hear by any stretch. I think this is it's a great start. It's a great step in the right direction. But I really think you're only going to see good teams get these PPI picks because they are committed to putting their best possible product on the field. And, the Mariners put their best possible product on the field, getting Julio up. And, they pretty much had 3 first-round picks last year to show for that.
Yeah, exactly. And Wood was a tough tweener in this kind of whole conversation because, I think it would have been too early to have him up at the beginning of the year and then, for opening day. And then now, he looks like he's ready, but who would have thought that he'd have this kind of start to the season and look the way that he's looked? It's a unique situation, but at the same time, like, I get it from the Nationals perspective now because it's like, why rush it? Just let him keep staying hot for another 3-4 weeks. And then you can still bring him up and he's going to have plenty of ABs at the big league level. But it is kind of just a weird gap in the system. But overall, I think we're seeing the PPI do a lot of really good things. I'm going to do like a full breakdown. I think sometime next week. I want to do both a like written and then maybe even like a video YouTube breakdown on the changes of Wood's swing. But there are some like clear things that I think are really allowing him to stay behind the baseball and to allow him to have, B swings that are extremely powerful. Whereas before, I felt like if he got kind of taken out by, if he was a little bit fooled on something, just wasn't much behind that swing. He was kind of losing his lower half and kind of losing his A swing. And now you're looking at a guy that is really getting coiled into the back hip. The hands are a little bit higher. And when he is fooled a little bit, there's still so much more behind him to get these B+ swings off and do a lot of damage. If you look at the second home run he hit, I believe, or it was one of the doubles, there was one swing that he had yesterday in that 4 for 5 with 2 home run performance that I just really hadn't seen out of his, out of his bag. I don't think really at any spot. And I'm trying to find it real quick because it was, again, just something I hadn't quite seen from him. But having this swing where, when he's fooled, it used to kind of just be like, oh, that's going to be on the ground. Where now when he's fooled and maybe on that front foot a little bit early, he's either staying inside of it and shooting it the other way with authority, which he did on a 112 liner, the other gap on a cutter that was kind of getting in on his hands. But I've also now seen him, kind of fooled on a breaking ball, still holding that backside so well and maintaining his path so well that he looks like he's fooled and he's still crushing a ball with a B swing to the pull side. So it just seems like he has more adjustability. And now you're seeing that power shine through, because that's the biggest advantage you have as a guy like James Wood, is that your B swings can be more powerful than other guys' A swings. So when you're fooled, you can still do more damage than most. That's why Aaron Judge hits so many home runs. Not every home run that Aaron Judge hits is perfect swing, perfect spot. Everything is mechanically perfect. There's a lot of times where, hey, I'm a little fooled, but I'm a physical specimen and I keep myself in a good hitting position that I can still do damage and shoot one the other way over the right field wall, or drive it pull side a little bit ass out, but still have enough behind it in the right path. And I think we're seeing James Wood on that trajectory.
Another Washington example of that was a young Harper. Like, a young Harper was doing that too, because the swing was so violent. He mishit homers. And, I think physically the comp to swinging so hard that you can mishit him is probably O'Neal Cruz, but that guy's on like a different level. But I mean, you'll see balls that come off his bat and it's like, oh, that's a pop up to shallow left, and it leaves the yard to the opposite field. And that's probably what Wood can do if he does have those slight mechanical tweaks to like just stay back a little bit longer and not fully dissipate everything that you got going on.
I mean, there's a swing from the 10th. So a couple days ago, 0-0 changeup, like pretty well located. And I highly doubt that Wood was sitting changeup 0-0, right? So like last year, that exact well located changeup early in the count, he's swinging over it. And in this spot, he, is sitting back. He's a little fooled, but he's able to hold it just long enough, get the barrel out, and he yanks 115-mile-an-hour line drive into right field. Like, those are the separators between, kind of being stuck and being a higher K guy and, just trying to slug enough to be a good big leaguer, or being the more well-rounded, complete guy that's going to do a little bit of everything at the highest level. And I think that's what we're seeing from a 21-year-old James Wood.
Okay, jumping back in Double-A, you cannot imagine a better 5 games for Emmanuel Rodriguez with the Minnesota Twins. And this was his first taste of Double-A ball. He spent the entirety of last year in high A Cedar Rapids, and he was awesome last year. He had a 400 OBP. In his first 5 games, Emmanuel Rodriguez is 7 for 18 with 3 doubles, 2 homers, 6 driven in. He's walked 6 times, a 25% walk rate. He's 4 for 4 in the stolen base department in his first 5 games. So this guy, through 5 games, slashing 389, 542, 889. Emmanuel Rodriguez, yeah, he still doesn't swing, whatever. He's hitting the crap out of the ball right now, it seems.
Yeah, he looks good. He looks really good on secondaries too. It seems like it could be coming together for him. Also, just a crazy like age situation. Sometimes it just puts things in perspective. Emmanuel Rodriguez is only 5 months younger than James Wood. That's always crazy when you have those little reminders. But I mean, Emmanuel's doing this in Double-A now, right? Like, this is a big jump for him. Guy that was striking out a lot in high A. It's a little scary sometimes. How's that going to work at the Double-A level? Well, we got 3 2-hit games out of his last 4. You mentioned all the numbers and the way that they've looked. You got home runs in back-to-back games. He's still walking. The Ks have been managed. He's hitting secondary so far as well as ever. I think it's early, but it's exactly what you would have wanted to see through the first handful of games.
100%. Let's jump to another guy in Double-A here. Carson Williams of the Tampa Bay Rays. Great 4 games for him. 8 for 17, pardon. 3 doubles, a homer, 4 driven in. He's punched out 4 times in 18 plate appearances. It's way too small of a sample to take, I think, anything away from that. But in terms of quality of contact, Carson is now seeing Double-A. You assume he's going to be there for a good bit of time because he spent the overwhelming majority of last year in High A. Then he got up to Double-A for a week, and then it was Triple-A for 3 games. Then he went back to Double-A. It was weird, but now he's kind of got a consistent home for 2024. And I mean, he looks like it's very early. He looks like he could really settle in here and make noise.
I mean, only his 4th 4-hit game of his professional career. So anytime you do something like that this early in the season at the highest level you've played at, I mean, that's always going to be exciting. The other 3 came at High A, last year, 2 of them coming at the end of the season at High A. So I think you got to feel pretty good about what we're seeing so far. It's the early thing. Of course, we're going to just continue to say that, but he's using the whole field, set the ball the other way pretty hard. He has a home run the other way already. And it's not as much of the home run dependence. We're seeing him spray doubles. We're seeing him just barrel baseballs, hit line drives, and he looks out of the gate like a more well-rounded hitter.
100%. How about Lonnie White? So Baseball Reference is spitting out 3 homers at me. Yeah, it is 3 homers. Lonnie White, 5 games. He's got 6 hits, 1 double, 1 triple, 3 homers. So 5 of his 6 hits have gone for extra bases. He's punched out 8 times in 5 games, whatever. Lonnie White is a guy that has been, it seems like perpetually unavailable to open his career. And he played 61 games last year, but 17 of which came at the complex as a 20-year-old. This was a high school guy. There were a lot of savings in 2021 on Henry Davis, who went 1-1. So then they spent that on Lonnie White and Bubba Chandler for the most part. And White, we're seeing what kind of thump the Pirates saw. And it's impressive. I watched the highlights of some of those homers that he's ripping in Greensboro, and they are majestic blasts. They're not, it's a bandbox, and he's just, scraping the wall of the bandbox.
No, he's hitting the ball hard. He is toolsy and fun. And he was committed to Penn State for football as well, was he not?
I think so, yeah. Malvern prep guy.
Yeah, I know he was a legit football guy. But I mean, dude, 6'3", 205 with that speed, you see the power. It's been so frustrating health-wise because we just haven't really been able to see him. And it's really hard to take much from any of the samples we've had because when he comes back, it's kind of been back and forth of dealing with injuries and kind of trying to play through it a little bit. And then, you mentioned just the rehab games, so many of them at the complex, I think just trying to get him to, just build up and get his body right. We just have not seen much of him at all. So you have to kind of look at him with a clean slate, and going into this year so far, it's been pretty good. I know that he's been striking out a lot, but I think it's also worth noting that, again, he hasn't had a ton of professional at bats. He's a high school guy, a multi-sport guy that I don't think was as, dead set locked in on baseball 24/7, facing the top competition all the time. So you're seeing some good breaking balls get to him a little bit so far, but in terms of the whiff rates, they're not that bad. I think it's just him getting acclimated to higher quality breaking balls at High A. But for considering his experience so far in terms of how many games he's played above the complex and just how many games he's played, period, High A is a big jump. And I think he's handling it pretty well. And I do think that strikeout rate's going to normalize a little bit. He's definitely a name I'm excited to keep monitoring.
If you were a decision maker with the Pirates, how would you handle Lonnie White's progression? Because he's clearly been delayed for a couple years. If he puts together a good 25 games in High A, do you bump him to double, or do you want him to be there for 4 months this year and then he can play 2 months in Double-A to end the year?
I would want him to be there most of this year. Still 21. I'd want to build on this because there's a lot of good things we're seeing. He's handling fastballs really well. I want to see that approach continue to improve. And if you're struggling to recognize breaking balls in High A, I think that's going to get real bad in Double. And you don't want to just start to stunt that momentum that we've been waiting for so long. And you also want him to be able to still work on some things and not be in fight or flight mode. I would want him in high A for most of this year. Get a taste of double on the back end. That means he'd get a taste of double before his 22nd birthday. He's still kind of on track, on a normal track.
So how about Termar? Because Termar is a year younger, but same level. If they put up identical numbers through the first 35 games in high A, do you bump Termar and keep Lonnie in high A?
I almost want both just to be there for most of the year, to be honest.
Okay.
I think Termar needs to work through some things. And I think he'd get chewed up pretty good in double A at this point. But again, if he goes nuts in 35 games, maybe you reevaluate, but I don't see a reason to rush him. He's not even 20 yet. There's still so much swing and miss in his game. I'd like to see him just really settle in and build on 200-300 at bats where he's not just leveraging the fact that he can get away with maybe putting himself into disadvantaged counts, because if you hang one, he's going to crush it, and guys in high A are going to hang him a lot more. It's just not going to happen as much in double A, and that passiveness and that swing and miss, I think, could really mount on him if he's not ready.
All right, so how do you handle Zyhir Hope then, who is kicking ass in low A? Zyhir Hope at this point is balling out like you haven't seen. 6 games, 6 extra base hits, 8 hits in total. He's 8 for 24, 3 doubles, 3 homers, 7 driven in, 2 bags already. He's OPSing 1262. You ID'd him as a breakout guy after he was part of that Michael Busch, Yency Almonte deal. It was Ferris and Zyhir Hope. I mean, you think they could have a top 100 prospect on their hands?
Yeah, I think they might have one. And by the time we update the list, man, like, he already has 8 batted balls over 105 miles an hour, which is insane.
Already?
But the other crazy part is he's walking. He's super patient. I mean, we're seeing him, I know it's small sample, 3 walks, but in terms of just the way he controls his ABs, what stood out to me was, like, you had that game where he went nuts, the 2 homers, and just was dialed in, and he's still drawing walks in AB like 4 or 5, still being very patient and not trying to do too much. I think the balance of the power that we're seeing already, and then the feel to hit, he's barely swung and missed within the zone. If I have it right, I think he's only swung and missed like twice within the zone so far this season.
Damn.
With good plate discipline, hitting the ball as hard as he's hitting it. And again, it was the swing mechanics that really sold me. I think this is a guy that you can bump to high A with a strong 35 games, just because of how polished and well-rounded the offensive game clearly has become.
And it might be too good to ignore, right?
Yeah. It might just be.
Crazy. That's crazy. All right. Another guy in low A who is, I think, 5 or 6 months older than Zyhir Hope is Jonny Farmelo with the Seattle Mariners. And Farmelo was, I think, the PPI pick, right? Because Colt Emerson was the first round pick. We did this. Colt Emerson.
We did this and we had it wrong the first time. So
yeah, I'm going to try again. Colt Emerson was the first round pick. Ty Pete was the competitive balance pick. And then the PPI pick was Farmelo. And I'm probably wrong. I'll check while you dive into Jonny Farmelo. But 6 games, a double, 3 homers. He had 3 homers right away. 6 RBIs. And this guy OPSing 970 right now. Farmelo is probably, relatively speaking, the runt of the litter between Emerson, Pete, and him, right? Like, if you look at those 3 first-round picks, I don't know. Like, Emerson feels.
I was thinking about that last night. I was thinking about that last.
Who's the odd man out if you got to keep 2? I feel like right now it's Farmelo, but if Farmelo puts together a continuous, really strong start in low A, it might be Ty Pete.
I was thinking about this last night, and I think with how fast Farmelo is, and now the fact that he's hitting the ball, I think maybe harder than a lot of people would have expected, it might just be Ty Pete. But what that Ty Pete has going in for him is he's a year younger than Farmelo. So I think, as you fist bump, so you got it.
Not really. I got it, but not really. The competitive balance pick came after the PPI pick. So I was right. Farmelo was the PPI pick, but Emerson went 22nd. Farmelo went 29th. Pete went 30th.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's just an insane trio there. I don't even know who the runt would be because of the fact that you have Ty Pete, who's a year younger. But in terms of like what they each look like individually right now, I think Emerson's kind of in his own ballpark in terms of how advanced and how solid he looks. But Farmelo has really surprised me with how advanced and solid he's looked relative to what I was kind of expecting. Elevating the ball consistently, absolutely motors, can play a good center field. But Pete's a full year younger. So like, and it's not like he's looked bad or overmatched by any stretch. So I think it's just a really wildly fun trio that probably is going to, I don't know if they're going to travel together because I could see Pete maybe being held back a little bit. Emerson's probably going to be the first. Farmelo may not be too far behind, but I think Farmelo and Pete will probably travel together a little bit more, in tandem.
Gotcha. Interesting. There's another guy that went a pick after Colt Emerson, Ralphy Velazquez, 23rd overall pick by the Guardians in last year's draft. And Ralphy Velazquez in his first 4 games is 5 for 16 with a double, 2 homers, and 5 driven in, and 1118 OPS through 4 games. Ralphie is a guy, let me see where he's played. He's played all 4 games at first base. I don't know if he's a catcher, and like that was actually abundantly clear during the draft. Like you have no idea if he's a catcher. He's technically a catcher, but he's probably a first baseman. At the end of the day, this guy is a big man, a big young man. 6'3", 215 is his listed height and weight, and he swings like a big man. You saw that in the draft process, and he looks very mature in his first couple of swings in low A.
He's 18. It sounds like first base, but it also looks like this bat is going to be the next first base prospect, top 100 guy at the lower levels that we get really excited about, which is rare because, you got to really believe in the bat to have a guy in the top 100 at the lower levels, a la Xavier Isaac, but really crouch stance, but really good control of his body and simple moves overall. And you mentioned just physical guy already, explosive swing. I think it's pretty efficient. And we're already seeing him pop, 109s for the home runs. And at 18 years old, that he's only going to get stronger. It's kind of converting some of that weight into just like strong, good weight. Not that he has a bad body, but it's just, he's going to mature physically. He's 18. So I'm excited. The swings that I've seen from this guy were a lot more advanced even than, I think I was expecting in his early parts of his pro career. He's gonna put up some big numbers this year at the lower levels. I definitely believe that.
Is he the next young power prospect that the Guardians trade away?
No, I think they're changing their ways now, man. I think this is the new Guardians wave. They're gonna start buying into these guys a little bit more.
It took losing Benson, Nolan Jones, Zyhir Diaz, and Caminero to change your ways. So good on you, Guardians. You figured it out. It might be too little too late, but we shall see.
Or Yandy Diaz, right?
And Zyhir.
They lost Zyhir too?
Yeah, they had Zyhir Diaz.
I forgot about that.
Yep, they had Zyhir Diaz.
That
really
is rough.
tough. Yeah, very rough. And by the way, they lost Yandy Diaz too. Last hitter that we want to talk about is Josue Briceno with the Detroit Tigers. He's got 8 hits in his first 6 games away from the complex. Or no, pardon. He played 11 games in Lakeland last year, but this year in low A, 8 hits. He's 8 for 21. No extra base hits just yet, but the number that jumps out is 5 walks in his first 6 games, 1 punch out in 27 plate appearances. Is this the next bat to ball catcher that we've got?
I don't know if he's going to stick behind the dish. I got to do a little bit more defensive diving into it. I think he's going to be kind of cut from that Basayo cloth where they're going to keep rotating him in at catcher. But I wonder if he starts playing a little bit more first and a little bit more first and a little bit more first. He's 6'4" at 19 years old. But what stands out to me is the field to hit at 6'4", and the power is going to come. He is in the Florida State League right now. It is not a place to try to do damage. And honestly, like you kind of see him just shooting line drives all over the field and looking really comfortable doing it. We've already seen him flash some EVs as high as 109 and to all fields too. He shot a 107 the other way. He just looks so comfortable, so under control. I think this is going to be a big name that you're going to hear a lot more about, whether he's still catching or he's playing first base. But it has been really fun to watch him hit so far this year, just to be so in control of your long levers at 19 years old. And I think just have such a smooth and patterned load. I'm really excited about this guy. And I think he could get up to high A relatively quickly, just depending on what they want to do with him, defensively and what their plan is there. But man, he is swinging it so far, and it's a really exciting feel to hit blended with some power. I do have one other name too to mention before we go to pitching to wrap up. Aidan Miller, the Philadelphia Phillies organization, their first round pick. He's been awesome out of the gate. I know it's just been 5 games, but 350, 440, 550, 990 OPS, 4 walks, 4 Ks, not swinging and missing at all, which was, that was the thing I was interested in monitoring. Like, how is he going to be against secondaries? So far, he has not been swinging and missing at all. He's been hitting the ball really, really hard as well. I've just been impressed with, he was a little bit older for the class. They're still playing him at shortstop. We'll see if he can stick there, but he's hit safely in every single game this year. The last 2, he has 2 hits in each, a double in the 2 games ago, a home run in his last game. I think that was the first of the season for him. And then even at the end of last year, he got up, and I don't think it shows up like on Fangraphs and stuff because it was a lot of like the postseason games, quote unquote. So when you look at his stint before that, it wasn't as good. But then he wrapped up the season with 3 consecutive 2-hit games and then a triple in the last game in those postseason low A matchups there. So kind of finished the year with some good momentum, and then now it started this year really hot. I'm really interested to see how Miller continues this, and he might get a little bit more of an aggressive push, being one of the oldest guys in that prep class. I got to do some more diving into how the shortstop defense looks, but if he has any chance of staying there, he's going to be a big helium name as well.
He's too old for me. I'm out. I can't convince myself that a 19-year-old high schooler is okay. It was a really interesting day in Clearwater on Thursday because Taijuan Walker started on rehab. Orion Kirkring threw an inning on rehab, and Aidan Miller went yard. And that was that's Phillies South for a day, which was pretty enjoyable. But I saw the highlight of the Aidan Miller homer. Problem is, I can't really appreciate it because it was moon landing level footage from the broadcast. And I was like, I wish I could see the ball actually fly off his bat and see the reaction and, get any of the flight of the ball. But hey man, welcome to low A. You just got to deal with it sometimes, I guess.
Unfortunately. And honestly, you didn't miss a ton. That was a barely got out. I don't even know how it got out kind of home run, but again, I think that's kind of a testament maybe to the way he can backspin baseballs and hopefully continue to elevate.
Got you. All right. I've got a list of pitchers that we'll fly through to wrap. All right. First pitcher that we've got is Christian Scott, and the only AAA pitcher. Remember that thing you said about striking out a lot of guys and not walking a lot of guys? He's doing that so far. First 9 innings in AAA, 7 hits, 4 earned. Okay. He's got 3 homers allowed. Okay. Boo-hoo. 19 Ks, 1 walk in 9 innings. What?
Yeah.
Did you call your shot?
We'll see. We'll see if he keeps doing it. What I will say is this was a lot better than the last outing, which I still thought was pretty good. It was once he got to the 75 pitch mark, hung a couple sliders, and that was the only reason why he gave up 3 runs in that last outing. But what we just saw against Worcester, 5 innings, 2 hits, the only run coming on that home run, that solo shot, 1 walk and 10 Ks is crazy. And it was Nathan Hickey, the home run, who can actually really swing it, just ambushing him in a hitter's count. And, it was a fastball that was middle. Like, it's going to happen sometimes, but he gets away with a lot of those. I mean, 54% strikeout rate to 3% walk rate is absolutely insane. And we also saw in this outing, he throws the same amount of pitches, has 1 more up down because he went 5 innings, and the fastball averaged 95.1 as opposed to 94.4 in his first start. So throwing harder, the stuff was better. He got more swings and misses. He gave up less hits. He only had 1 more walk than the other outing because the other outing was 0. I mean, I don't think we need to see this guy pitch that much more in AAA. And I think the Mets could use him at the big league level. I would call him up tomorrow personally because I don't like wasting bullets at this point. He clearly looks ready. But I wouldn't be surprised regardless if we see him up in the next few starts. The only thing that I'm kind of waiting on with him is the changeup was there for him all year last year. It hasn't been there for him as much in the early part of this year, which ironically, he's had this he's adjusted the slider, and that's been devastating for him. Like he's just been destroying hitters with the slider. So once that changeup comes back, he might even look better, which is pretty terrifying.
They'll probably justify having him in the build-up phase for another like 2-3 starts because he just went 4 then 5. I bet he goes 6 twice with Syracuse, and then I bet he comes up. What's his high pitch count?
It was 82 game 1 and then 83 game 2.
I don't know, but like that's already a decent workload, and you can deal with
that
at the major league level. It's not 50, it's 80.
That's what I'm saying. I hope they bring him up relatively soon.
I can see 2 more starts in Syracuse. I'm calling my shot on that one. I think 2 more starts there, just because they'll want to build him up to 90 or something. See him get over 90 twice. If he responds well to 90 twice, then he goes up, and you can move Adrian Hauser into a long relief role, whatever you want to do there if you're the New York Mets. Caden Dana is an interesting name, and this is a guy that is kind of the only hope for the Angels in that farm system right now. Like I don't
Nelson
really
Rada.
Yeah, Rada. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. Rada's ETA is what, 2034?
Well, no, they fast tracked him to Double-A.
Dude,
but
he's 18.
Yeah, and they just shoved him straight up to Double-A. He's become like the new like prospect, like cult hero kind of thing. Is that the right way to describe it? Like I haven't seen a prospect with like the last time I saw this kind of like, and I'm not comparing them because I think he's a better prospect, but the last time I kind of saw this love for a prospect from like the larger community was like the Austin Charles stuff, and then it went radio silent real quick. Rada's higher floor because he can play good defense, and he's solid in center field. But very aggressive send to Double-A for the 18-year-old. So I don't know what the ETA is, but I would say it's not going to be whatever the updated ETA was when people saw him assigned to Double-A. Like he's going to struggle up there this year. It's going to be a bit of a process. I think he's a good prospect. I don't think he's maybe what some out there are trying to tout him to be. But Caden Dana is, I think, what the lovers of Caden Dana are touting him to be, because he looks like he could be a guy in that rotation as soon as the end of this year.
So Dana went 4 2/3, 3 hits, 2 runs, struck out 7, didn't walk anyone, hit 2 batters though. What did you see from the pitch shapes that encouraged you?
I mean, the fastball is good, man. Like he just gets good ride on that. And at times it can he can get on the side of it, but I think he's more of a guy that can have success with the ride, true ride, and then the ride and run as well. But then the slider is just a really nasty pitch for him. So I think you've got the fastball slider that are both borderline plus pitches, and he fills up the zone pretty well. You mentioned the 2 hit by pitch, but other than that, no walks, really filling up the zone overall. And I just like what you're kind of seeing from him in terms of the fastball confidence, going east-west, spotting it, and then he'll mix in the curveball just enough to kind of keep you honest. I'd like to see a little bit less reliance on the fastball, because he has been, throwing it a lot. But at the same time, when you're hitting your spots and you're getting whiffs, it's kind of hard to throw it less. But that curveball is kind of the thing to monitor as that third pitch for him. And so far, he's thrown some good ones, but it's been very fastball slider heavy. But the 20-year-old really hasn't needed anything other than that.
Yeah. Interesting guy with the Mets. Calvin Ziegler, we're about to get into. Calvin Ziegler last year got back to low A for 1 inning. And Calvin Ziegler in low A struck out the side in order. Then he goes to high A this year, and he works 4 perfect innings with 9 Ks. So his last 2 appearances, he's gone 15 up, 15 down with 12 punch outs. Was this the most impressive performance of the low minors opening weekend? 4 perfect, 9 punch outs.
Would you go Sean Sullivan or that one?
This one.
Then
because like Sullivan allowed base hits, and I think he allowed a run.
Hits.
Yeah, so
one unearned run.
Yeah, 1 unearned run, but he walked 1. He allowed some base hits. Like this was perfect.
Yeah, and perfect with a lot of Ks. I mean, I'm pretty sure there were only 3 balls put in play, and one was a pop up at 88. Another was a grounder at 82. and then another was a fly out that was hit decently well at 96. The fastball dominance is what like really stands out. He threw 37 fastballs and 27 for strikes, and just nobody could hit it. 7 at bats against the fastball, 5 punch outs. He was getting crazy swings at the top of the zone. Hitters just looked uncomfortable the entire outing. He's always been a guy that was, I think, under the radar, like some helium. People were excited about him. And then the injuries have just kind of screwed him up. You know, he had loose fragments in his elbow, gets those taken out, like bone spur type of thing. And then in his rehab, tears his quad. So that really just wiped him out for a while. But I don't think you have the same like recurring, oh, it was a shoulder, elbow, this, that, as like some of the other pitchers that have had this long of a layoff. And clearly he's come back and looks pretty healthy. He's sitting, you know, low to a lot of mid 90s. Hitters just can't pick up that fastball. It just has this kind of invisible thing going for it. And then the slider, you know, plays really well also. It was really interesting to see hitters just take such bad swings at his fastball. Like clearly there's something going on out of the hand there. I'm excited. I'm in. Like I think that this is a guy that's a top 15 prospect in the Mets system. And as long as he stays healthy, I think we're going to see a lot of helium here too.
Shout out Kitchener. I think it's Kitchener, Ontario, Canada. Canadian guy. Him and Mitch Bratt. 2027 World Baseball Classic. Stand up.
Yeah.
So that'll be good. Justin Wrobleski will not make Team USA in 2027. But Justin Wrobleski of the LA Dodgers has been really strong through his front with 2 starts at this point. Justin Wrobleski has gone 10 innings, 2 earned on 8 hits. He's punched out 12 and walked just 1. I think what we learned from Wrobleski last year is like he's going to pound the zone. He had 109 punch outs, 35 walks, but this is kind of a new level that we've seen. And look where he is, man. He's a Tulsa driller. They might just have something in the water in that Tulsa clubhouse.
Seriously.
I mean, he looks pretty dominant right now.
Dating back to the end of last season, 26 and a third innings, 33 strikeouts, 1 walk.
Yeah.
I mean, that'll play a 2.05 ERA. That was finishing the season in Great Lakes. And then the 2 starts that you have here in AA. AA was where I was interested. I was like, okay, is the funk going to work, play up the same way? Because sometimes funk, like you mean Lin, right? Like you see a little bit of the funk, but the stuff isn't quite as loud as you might think. And then you get to AA and maybe the whiff numbers, and the ERA figures aren't as good. You mean Lin sprays though a little bit more too. So I think with Wrobleski, you're seeing the funk play still at the AA level because he's even funkier. But 2, you're seeing the fact that he can command the unique delivery and kind of that slingshot, over almost like the shoulders turning back over, hides the ball really well. Like you're seeing him repeat that move a lot and fill up the zone, and just hitters seem to feel rushed at the plate. I think it's very clear that he's got the deception working with him in tandem with pretty good stuff. And then also just the ability to fill up the zone. One of our newest prospect writers, Bruce Kuntz, did a really good job talking about why Wrobleski could be a dude for the Dodger system. You can check that out on justbaseball.com, but it's getting harder and harder to argue against these results.
And it's getting harder and harder to picture like what the Dodger pitching staff looks like moving forward, because they spend $300 million on, one guy, and they spend $700 on another guy. And, all of a sudden you run into the log jam. Oh, I mean, they just spent 135 on another guy in Glass now. And then you run into the Dustin May, Walker Buehler, what happens there. And then not to mention you've got Bobby Miller, Gavin Stone, Sheehan at this point. Like there's an absurd amount of pitching with the LA Dodgers.
One last note on Wrobleski, just to build on like the other aspect of like what makes him unique is you get the kitchen sink approach too, which is really tough. So far, he's thrown fastball, slider, cutter, sinker, changeup, curveball, all of which for a strike rate of 67% or higher.
Damn.
I know it's 2 starts, but like that's intriguing.
Yeah, and like a kitchen sink is interesting at 90. A kitchen sink is really interesting at 95.
Yeah,
and that's what we're talking about.
He's averaging 95 on the dot.
Yeah. So like that could be a new level of kitchen sink that you really don't see much aside from all-stars and top prospects. He's older for the level. I think he's 23, like a mid 23 in AA, but he was dealing with injury and shit, man. We'll see. Another guy in the National League West is Adam Mazur of the San Diego Padres. And Adam Mazur is off to a really solid start. 2 starts under his belt, 11 innings, 5 hits, 1 run came on a solo homer, punched out 12, walked 1. What have you seen from Mazur? Midwest stand-up from St. Paul, started at, I think, South Dakota, and then was an Iowa Hawkeye too.
He's just doing what he's been doing, but just now continuing to repeat it and continuing to just churn out good start after good start after the way we saw him finish last year. Not even 23 yet. I feel like he pitches with so much polish, though, that you almost feel like he's a guy with some big league service sometimes when you watch him throw. But the fastball has been averaging 95, which is important because there's not insane characteristics to it, but it's good enough. And then when he's closer to 95, it's going to play as an above average heater. The slider, he just commands the heck out of and just continues to do that. 80% strike rate on the slider so far this year, and just getting plenty of whiff and chase on that. But then also mixing in the curveball and the changeup. Like, it's a true 4-pitch mix that he commands really well. And if the fastball is, sustained at this, almost tick up from last year, then I think you're going to feel even better about, where he's at. What I saw at the end of last year, and you kind of just saw over the course of last season, the strike rate on his changeup and curveball was sub 60%. It was mostly fastball, slider, dominating with that, and then mixing in, the changeup and curveball enough to where, he could change his looks. But so far this year, again, we know that the fastball and slider have always been there for him, especially that slider, which I think I have a double plus on in that Padres farm system write-up. But the fact that now, small sample, that he is mixing in the curveball and the changeup so far this season at a strike rate of 80%, now he's thrown 30 of them, 24 for strikes, that can really change things for Mazur and make him a call-up candidate, I think, by the end of the year if the Padres need him, in the rotation. I think he's a high probability number 4 starter for a decent rotation, and I think we're seeing that right now.
Do you think they turn to him before Snelling? Just because, like, you're more focused on Snelling's development?
I think it's with them. I think it's just whoever's performing better. And right now, I think Mazur looks a little bit more ready.
And we're so early.
This guy threw 6 innings in 53 pitches.
Yeah, that's damn.
He's efficient as hell too right now.
And it's not like it was 6 innings, 1 punch out. That's the thing.
No,
like
he had 4.
If it was, yeah. So like that's really impressive.
And he had 8 the outing before that and went 5 innings, 56 pitches. So this dude has pitched 11 innings in 109 pitches.
Damn.
84 strikes.
How about mini Maddox over here?
Yeah, I was saying, like, it's almost a Maddox. It really is a Maddox.
It is. It's better. If you go innings, if you go pitches per inning, like he threw a Maddox and he's off to a really efficient front two in start 2. So damn, man. Tip of the cap to you, Adam Mazur. One more guy that you mentioned right before we started recording, and I'm just, gonna kick it over to you, is Gunnar Hoglund of the Oakland A's. And, that's a guy, 2-time first-round pick. He went first round to the Pirates out of high school, didn't sign. And then he went first round to Oakland in 2021 out of Ole Miss. No, he went first round to Toronto in 2021 out of Ole Miss. But now he's with Oakland. And this guy, 9 2/3, 3 earned, punched out 11 and walked 3. What have you seen from Gunnar Hoglund at this point?
He was in that Matt Chapman trade. And, highly regarded arm for a long time. So someone I'm always just monitoring, but, just so many injuries. And, just even last year, I started to get worried because when he came back and threw, I think, the most innings we'd seen him throw since 2021, not only was it bad, he had a 6 ERA, but his fastball velocity, some outings was barely over 90. And that was definitely concerning. First start this year in Double-A, he goes 4 2/3. It wasn't anything crazy, but he doesn't give up any runs, 3 walks, 3 Ks, but most importantly was averaging 93 with the heater. And then I don't have the info on this last outing, but I'm very excited to see what the data looks like, because against Amarillo, second outing now, building off of that 67 pitch, performance, we see him go 5 innings, 3 runs, no walks, 8 Ks, and he threw 80 or more pitches for the first time since he pitched at Ole Miss. And, this was the first time since April of 2021 that he's thrown more than 80 pitches. So just congratulations to Gunnar Hoglund on that. I'm always rooting for those guys. And, he's got to feel good beyond just having the good outing, throwing more pitches than he's thrown in almost 3 years. Like, it's just things you love to see.
For sure.
That's it for this episode. We will be doing I want to do a top 100 mailbag next week. Kind of answer any questions that people have about the top 100 list in an episode. Try to get to as many as we can. Any other like fun scheduling notes, thoughts, ideas you have for next week? But that was the one thing I want to fit in sometime next week. So keep an eye out for that. We're going to be fielding questions on our Instagram as well as the Twitter. But in an effort to promote our Instagram, I'm going to take a couple extra from our Instagram. So you can follow that in the link in our description. Anything else that you want to kind of plug or that you think we're going to get into next week?
I don't think so. I think we're hanging out. We'll have another slew of starts from Skeens and Job under our belt, so we can kind of get into that too. But no, like we'll get 3 more games of Jackson Holiday too. And I'm excited to see Jackson Holiday like at home just kind of get into a groove and all that. Because in Boston, like it was just a weird
crappy
debut.
Weather. It was weird.
Yeah, like I'm excited to have 5 games of Jackson Holiday under our belt.
Me too. And we'll just continue to keep you updated with everything going on in the minors. We'll do some like early maybe data standouts, things like that. But that's usually stuff that we're getting into every week on those bonus episodes again, which you can check out in the episode description. Oh, of course, Mets prospects next week as well. That's what we'll be doing as we continue to churn through these top prospect lists by team. Hope you have a great weekend. Look forward to talking prospects with you next week.